we're talking about the process. That's kind of what the conversation's about. And I'm glad that both of y'all are on because you're at different points in the process. And I think there would be some things that, Vicki, you could share and say, if I had known this then, I would have done things differently today. Or, things, maybe Susan, there's questions that come up in your mind that we haven't covered yet. And hopefully as we talk through the whole process, that's what I'd love to hear. But Susan, where are you at? Just to kind of, for context of the conversation, where are you at in the process?
Yes, slightly earlier stage than Vicki, as you mentioned. Just have revised architect plans back from James. So we're sort of down to one plan now. So narrowed it down to like sort of one design. And I think we're close, probably like 85% there or whatever. So we have a call next week just to go over feedback on that plan, just so that we can land on how the layout is and everything.
Yeah. And that's good. I like having multiple perspectives on the conversation. So Susan just started kind of the second phase of our design process. And then Vicki, as you mentioned, you're kind of in the finalization of specifications and getting your construction loan and breaking ground. So I'm going to do kind of like a general recap of what we at Randard, what we've learned overall, after seeing some homes be built. Some projects maybe could have gone more smoothly. Some went really smoothly, kind of things that we learned along the way. And then, of course, answering questions. Maybe, Susan, you have one for Vicki and vice versa. What did you learn? One of the phrases I really liked that I learned recently is, where did you find the blueberries? And they were touching on kind of this instinct of, if you're in a tribe, if you're part of a community, and you come back to the community and you have blueberries in your hands, everybody's going to ask, what did you do to find the blueberries? Not, what did you do wrong? They're going to say, how did you find them? And I think that applies for custom home design too. We're learning things constantly. We're getting better constantly as a design team, architecture, interiors, all these things, as contractors and homeowners and all of these people. What did we find that works? And so I'd love to hear from both of y'all as we keep talking, and anybody else who joins. Where did you find the blueberries? Where did you find success? What were those aha moments? I'm going to talk about the broad, for the sake of a webinar. I'm going to talk about the broad overall process step by step, and maybe ask y'all some questions and get involved. And then after maybe 20 minutes, I'm going to try to keep it to a half hour total of the conversation. But maybe after 20 minutes or so, we'll do like a Q&A, ask each other questions. Y'all can ask me some questions. And I'm not coming at it from an expert perspective. I'm more coming at it from that blueberry perspective. Like, what did we learn along the way? So with that said, what I was planning on talking about was owning the process. Owning the process to me means getting out in front of it, not letting the process drive you, but you're driving the process. Not being in a reactive state, but being in a responsive state, being in a place where maybe you're prepared for a surprise, because surprises come, just like Vicki said a moment ago. Sometimes you have a plan and it doesn't go right. But owning the process doesn't mean that everything goes perfectly. Owning the process means that you're prepared for delays, you're prepared for unforeseen circumstances, you're prepared when things go right, and you're prepared for when things don't go as planned. And to me, that's owning the process. So owning it means understanding the big picture. What are we trying to do? What's the outcome that we're looking for? Very clearly, tangibly, and clearly stated to each other. What are we trying to accomplish? And what are all the small steps to get there? And when I think about the process of designing and building a custom home, I really think of it like a puzzle. You have, 1,000, 5,000 pieces, and you dump it on a table. And somebody's starting on the borders, somebody's starting on the inside. You got the box though. And you're looking at it, and you have a vision and a goal for what you're trying to assemble. You've got all of these different people, if you've got a good team, that are putting together different pieces of the puzzle as you go. It's not necessarily linear, the process, but there is a start to finish that has to happen in order for it to get done. So when we look at a custom home design project, the first thing we need is a concept. We need a vision. So clearly stated to me what a vision consists of is really three things when we talk about a custom home. A vision consists of a budget. So budget just means, what are we designing to? What are we trying to get out of our materials? How much are we going to spend on the site prep, the construction process, the materials, the the labor that goes into designing this? So what's my budget? What can I spend? What am I willing to spend? What do I have to spend money on? And targeting that budget is about your means. So everybody has a different budget, but having a vision really consists of, what are we capable of doing? That's the main thing I'm looking at from that perspective of when we start a custom home project, is what can we do with the budget? So I don't care if it's high or low or anything in between. We're not really driven by that. What we're interested in is seeing what's capable for your vision. So vision consists of a budget. A vision also consists of a style. So there's something aesthetic going on. Susan, I remember when we walked around together in your home, just looking at the colors, the greens that you had in the different rooms, the type of wood, the type of materials, the style. There's an aesthetic to the vision. And so when we capture an aesthetic, we're capturing a style. We have to know what we're designing to. And then the last thing would be function. What are we doing functionally to get this done? What are the functional needs of the home? So those three things have to be in play. I have to have a functional set of needs. What do you need this home to do? What needs is it meeting? Is it a family home? Is it a vacation home? What is it? Is it a second home or vacation rental? All of that informs design. So first we start that vision, and then we can start taking steps. So once I identify those three things, a design style, a budget, and the functional needs of the home, then we can start designing with some vision. The next step in the process is then understanding the property. When I say understanding the property, I mean, what is the municipality in this area? Is it a city? Is it county? Is it state? Is there an HOA? Is there not an HOA? What covenants are we going to run into? What's the process to get this approved? So one of the first things when we look at the land is, what is it going to take to build on this land? One of those things is going to be requirements. So we could do like a big heading, say requirements, and all of the things that go under requirements are going to be those entities that I just mentioned. Then when we talk about requirements, we're going to talk about site prep. This is one of the things that I think Vicky's about to start doing when she's getting into construction, is site prep, groundbreaking. So what's it going to take? What's it going to take to clear out trees? What's it going to take to pave? What's it going to take to get this piece of property ready to develop? That's part of your construction costs. So logically in the process, when we go from design concept, we got style, budget, and function. We've got a piece of land that we want to develop, and we know what the requirements are. Well, now we need to know what their costs. Those things are going to be your septic. Are you connected to sewer? Are you connected to utilities? What do you need to be connected to make this happen? When I also think about requirements, I think about what we need, as a design team, but also for your home to get built. You're going to need a site survey. If you have a septic system, you're going to need a septic survey. In some cases, you'll need a soil and perk test. Not every case you'll need geotech, but in a lot of cases you will. And those things tell you about what's on the property, what's on the land. So when we talk about requirements, we're also talking about knowledge about the topography, knowledge about what's there. Are we going to hit bedrock when we drill down, or do we have a good buildable piece of land? So those all are part of the process of getting to where we unfold the plan. So in our process, we do a discovery in which we kind of get our hands into the property, understand what's going on, understand design, function, and budget, understand requirements, and then we start designing around a solution. So designing is creative, but it's also very practical. So the next step in that process is documentation. Documenting means we're going to start creating plans and specs. Basically very easily put, it's plans and specs. Plans and specs are what you're going to need for your construction loan. So that's, again, Vicky, that's your stage. That's where you're at right now. I would love to hear kind of what your experience has been so far with the construction loan process, and what has been a headache, and what could you have done differently, or what did you learn, aha moment. But essentially, to get a set of a construction loan, you need plans and specs. For us, plans and specs means construction set, permit set, which is architectural and structural documents. So those two sets of documents are going to be what you're going to use for your building permit. When you go to ask for a building permit, we suggest always having it engineered properly. We suggest always having the architectural set done as well. And that's what the bank's going to need so they can appraise the home to the way you're building it. They're going to need the specifications. So they want to see item for item, what does that look like? Vicki, sounded like you wanted to chime in on that. I don't mind if you wanted to share some thoughts on that process.
Well, Jack, I wish I had known you way before. We bought a piece of land, and our story is very different. It's very unconventional, unprepared. We bought the lot first because I was in this panic of trying to get something before anything else happens. It's very hard to get a piece of land, and especially to your specification and getting the budget, how much to do for this. So we first secured the land, and then it was a gamble. It was a gamble, and it was a big gamble because we have to spend a lot of money on groundbreaking and getting the land suited for building a house. It's on a very steep slope, so it requires a lot of work. Mm-hmm. But in any event, and I am the type of person that I'm not going to go to the next step until I have this step completed, like secure that it's going to happen. I didn't want to invest money if it's not going to happen. So we first had to make sure that the land is buildable. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of work because we had to get the county involved right away, and we had to get geotech involved. We had the surveyor involved, and and we had to get a variance because our lot is not very deep.
Yeah,
we wanted to get more room, so we were successful in all of those endeavors. It took a while, but it was not on our part. But we were successful. So
and our interaction kind of went in phases too, because we met you when we were just doing architectural designs, and we kind of
one of your first clients, right?
Right. And even though it's taken some time, I feel like this momentum has built within your project to the point where I saw some of the renderings from your home in Canton, and man, I think it's beautiful, the design that you've come up with, James. And so we're going to have a really big celebration when we
I can't wait. I cannot wait. It's really been a piece of nice work done by James, and we just tweaked it, and I didn't change anything except for the layout of the master bedroom and the kitchen. That was it. Everything stayed original. He talked to us, and he was so perceptive, and I guess we did a good job of describing what we want because he put it on paper, and it just that's what we want,
Right. Yeah.
And it's just getting improved even more as we as we go into this journey.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, so the construction loan wasn't too difficult for us because that we were prepared for, because we knew that we were going to get a piece of land or go to another house after this house that we have. We knew that we had to fix our credit and have all the money prepared. So we got all that done, and we got approved for the construction loan, pre-approved very easily. And now we budgeted for $600, and we were hoping that at $200 a square foot with a GC, that would be great. But 2 years later, that is not even reachable with $200 a square foot. Everything has gone up.
Yeah.
So we are over budget.
Yeah.
We are over budget.
Yeah.
Because of all the materials and labor costs rising.
Well, and that's a good point too, because to your point, Vicki, you can't always predict what is the market going to be 3 years from now. You started the process 3 years ago, and so it's hard to put a pin on exactly how much materials cost, but budgets also change. What I think helps in your process and in everybody's process is at least knowing what goes into it. So when we talk about plans and specs, specifications are so important because it's our way of identifying what materials go where and how much those materials cost. So, we hear the question all the time. Somebody asked me on Facebook, how much does a 2,000 square foot home cost to build? and they want me to say X per square foot. And I always want to say, well, how much does a car cost to build? It all depends on what vehicle you're picking out, who the maker is, where you bought the car from, the features, the enhancements, all those things. Just because it has 4 wheels and a steering wheel doesn't mean it's the same as a Ferrari. So it's the same with a home. You can build 2,000 square foot in New York City, in Manhattan, and it's going to be a very different cost than in Georgia. So it's all about context. What's a realistic budget? Well, that really depends on what your spending power is. So I would say, like what you guys did that was smart, Vicky, was you came with some spending power. You came with a figure in your mind, and then you have to be amenable. Do we go up with our budget, over budget? Are we okay with that, or do we bring the design down? So part of that process to where you're at is the push and pull. Hopefully, like in Susan's case, we do that push and pull early. So we find out, like, where are we at with price per square foot, or what are the ideas for the materials? Do you want good, better, or best with your materials? Most of our clients want the better and the best layer of materials, but there's some things they're okay with getting the good. You don't have the very best faucets in every room of the house, but you may want the very best range over your kitchen and your kitchen. Is prioritizing. I would say that's a big part of the process too, is prioritizing which things are the must-have and which things are, oh, I'm good with builder grade, or I'm good with the average on those things. So in the process, we generate plans and specs. That's going to get you your construction loan. Naming a GC is going to be a big part of getting a construction loan. I'm curious, Vicky, we'll have a whole webinar that you're going to be my guest host on, where we talk about be your own GC, because I really want to ask you a lot of questions about that. But typically, clients have a GC, and banks look for a qualified GC to give them a construction loan. So in a typical GC-led project, that's going to be your person who submits your building permit application, because they're assuming the liability that the home is built properly. Otherwise, and in people like Vicky's case, the homeowner assumes that liability as the GC. But the bank wants to see a licensed GC. A lot of times, big banks want to see that the person has a track record, that they've built homes, that they're qualified to build homes, and then they'll start releasing funds once that construction loan is approved, and then your builder, your GC, will start drawing funds to then start the process going with the construction. We don't get involved in that very much. We assist with the construction, and we enable our contractors and our client contractors to get that done. So we don't go away. If they're building, we're going to be a part of the build process to the very end. But hiring GCs or hiring subcontractors, doing site visits, doing the final inspections, all of that's handled through whoever the GC is. Mm-hmm. In our world, that process looks like getting plans and specs, getting a building permit. So going to the county, going through your GC, getting an approved building permit. At that stage, you will have in your hand a set of structural documents and a set of architectural documents. Assuming you have landscape design and interior design, you'll have exterior specifications. So in a landscape design world, we'll talk about that for a second, because that's an important part of the process. Some people are going to, or some counties and some cities are going to want to see a stormwater management plan in order to approve your building permit. So Vicky, I think you can speak to this too, but in our case in Sandy Springs, we were developing a project in the city. So we're in the city of Sandy Springs, and that's a must have. A stormwater management plan, especially in a more densely populated area, means what's going to happen to the runoff of your water when it hits your home, when it hits your property. So we do recommend, if you don't have a landscape designer, find one, or landscape architect, because it's not just that they're making the outside of the home look pretty. They're not just picking out trees and shrubs and bushes. And that is a part of it, because they want to pick out your vegetation for you and your hardscapes, what's concrete, what's pebble, what's fence. But they also want to help you make sure that your erosion control plan is going to work, that your soil or your stormwater management plan is going to work. And that's not always required by the county. Not every county wants a stormwater management plan. But it certainly can help your builder, and it can certainly help make sure that your home is going to drain properly, because it's porous. Everything is porous. Everything, even concrete, porous. So having a stormwater management plan is an important part of that process as well. But at the end of a design process, assuming, whether it's us or somebody else, we want specifications on everything on the outside. Vicki, again, I'm talking about you so much because your project is very familiar to me, but you guys picked out like a Nichi-High exteriors. So that's a process too. Sometimes homeowners will get very involved in touching and seeing and feeling all the materials that are going to go into the home, and that can be fun. It can be frustrating. It can be both, but it helps if you're on budget. And like I said, Vicki, I'd love to hear what your thoughts about the process on the material selection, or if you'd like to.
Material selection. Well, on the exterior, James had asked us, I didn't know what to put in because I didn't want it to look like the traditional house where you have the lap siding all throughout. I didn't like that. I like the more modern look. And he said, why don't you try Nichi-Ha? And I looked at the Nichi-Ha website, and oh my gosh, I loved it. At the first time I saw that, we fell in love with it, and we wanted to use it. And so I said, we are going to spend money on the exterior of the house, because that's, building this house is not only for us, it's an investment. No matter how you look at it, this is an investment. So I said, if we end up having to sell the house because it's too big later on, we can at least get some good return on it,
Yeah.
So Nichi-Ha is the way to go for modern, look homes, and that it's beautiful. I love the colors. I love the texture, and it's really nice. Susan, if you haven't looked at it, take a look at Nichi-Ha, because it's nothing like the James Hardie has something similar. I didn't even look at James Hardie because I know they're expensive, and I've been asking people, the dealership and all that stuff said James Hardie is typically more expensive.
Yeah.
So the material maybe more expensive, but the labor on Nichi-Ha is more costly because.
Yeah, those are some great observations. Like how do you make those intelligent decisions? Weighing your longevity versus your upfront costs. It's ROI. And that's where wisdom comes in, because you could get a less expensive material, but is it going to last? Is it going to have the look you want? And is it going to have retail? So a lot of people will say, this is going to be my forever home. And I love that expression, because I agree. This should be the home that you put your heart and soul into. And that's what I hear people say when they say forever home. But let's be real, none of us live forever. It will not be in this home forever. It will not happen. So we need to think about the legacy of that home leaves behind. Is it an investment? I love what you said, because if it's a true investment, we have to think about who gets the home later when we pass on. Is it going to have value to somebody else, the next generation? Is it going to, whether it's our children or somebody we love, or somebody we sell the home to, like a new family? Who knows? There's all kinds of ways that legacy can hold up, and when it comes to a custom home. But I think the important part is that we're always thinking about some kind of equity. What is that equity that we're getting out of the home, whether it's monetary or personal or whatever? It should be a well-built home that budget is getting the most value out of each dollar that's being spent. So yes, it's time consuming. I know this has been a long process for you, Vicki, but what I like about y'all's approach towards it is that you want to do it right by your terms, and doing it right by your terms means getting value out of every dollar that you spend on the home. As we get kind of closer to the 30-minute mark, because that was kind of my soft stop, Susan, I would love to hear from you a little bit too, since you're kind of in the beginning stages of it. What things have gone easier than expected in the process, and what things have been more challenging than expected? Or if not challenging, more challenging than expected, that's fine. But I'd love to hear your answer, is kind of like what's been working really smoothly and what was unexpectedly challenging for you as you started the process.
Yeah, well, so far so good, and I think I'm at the early stage, but we were lucky that we bought the land as well. First, it's actually next to a cabin that we have, and we also bought it from people that were going to build on it. So we were lucky to know that they had done the soil tests and septic tank tests, and we had those. So at least we knew that the land was buildable. So that was helpful. And then I think what you said up front, Jack, about like owning the process and knowing what you want. And as you know, I recently just retired, but I have a marketing background. So I wrote a brief because I thought, like, how do I tell these people
Was very
what I
helpful.
want on a call and remember everything? So I just wrote like a 3-page brief, right? Just like I used to do in my job. And I think that has been helpful because it's got us like all on the same page. And we, as we've gone through the process so far, it feels very aligned and easy to make decisions because we already have, sort of a starting direction. I think the thing that's a bit ambiguous to me at the moment is the building permit process, specific to LJ, and also, are there any red flags that this, it's not a primary residence. It's in fact going to be my second house in LJ that is not a primary residence, and I'm not quite sure whether there are any gotchas that would come up there specifically with the LJ planning process or any restrictions that they have. But the process working with you guys and with James, obviously it's hard to make decisions on design and architecture plans, but I think we've got there reasonably smoothly. So far so good. There's just some unknowns still.
Yeah, and those are good points because every project's unique. Everything has its own set of sets of intentions behind them. So it's really just as we get to the permitting process, it's to me, it's asking the right questions. I think that's my biggest takeaway. As I've seen it happen several times over, is it's not it's what questions to ask, I think is the best way I would put it. And it's how to go about it. So sometimes it's almost like playing poker with the county, if that makes sense. Like, you go into this with your cards kind of here, and sometimes tipping your hand may result in people getting more reactive and more overthinking about the process than they need to. So when we go to the county, it's like we're asking the questions that we need to understand what they're looking for. I guess that's the best way to put it. Not, hey, here's what we're trying to do, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Goes.
Yeah, and that's why I haven't rung them. I don't want to reveal it.
Right. It's not that you're being
answer who I am.
Yeah, it's not that you're being secretive, but it's that whenever you're dealing with a city or a county or anybody who's in a position of authority,
be smart about it.
Right. Exactly. Looked like somebody was trying to join in, but I didn't. Okay. I think somebody else.
Yeah, let me say something.
Yeah, let me let Linda in, and we'll keep the conversation going real quick. Hi, Linda. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Thanks. Good to see you too.
Okay. I've got two of our clients on with me, and we were just getting to our Q&A spot. Vicky Bantug is designing a home in Canton, Georgia. Susan Fletcher is designing up in LJ, Georgia. They're both doing brand new custom homes. Linda, you've got a beautiful piece of property from a home built in the 20s over in downtown Marietta in the historical spot. And we'll have to hear the story about that again soon. But just to recap and then get to what Vicky was going to add, we've been talking about the process. Since you missed a little bit, Linda, the recording is going to be available. I'd go back and listen to the first half hour, but we're kind of at the Q&A session. So we're talking about what went well in the process. We talked about permitting. What do you need for construction loans as far as plans and specs? Understanding the requirement process. For example, if you're in historical Marietta, what are the tree requirements? What are the addition requirements? What are the ADU requirements? There's a ton of requirements that are specific to the place that you're at. And Lindo, you could probably tell me for an hour and a half about what it's like in Marietta. But Vicky, it sounded like you had a question or a comment. I would love to get to it.
Yeah. So in dealing with the officials at the county level or whatever
Yes.
level of government you
Yes.
have, it's really, really good to know the personality of the person that you're going to be dealing with, because they could have been there forever and they wield a lot of power and they feel like they're God, you know?
Mhm.
Or they could be very helpful. So
Yes.
it would be, it's really helpful to know, to ask people, maybe your neighbors in the area, how to deal with this person, or even your GC, if they know, if they built in the area, see how do we approach this person? Because I was lucky enough to have somebody tell me how this person is, and this is how you have to approach that person. Be really, really nice, no matter how the person is, right? You have to be nice anyway, but in this
Right.
case, you have to be really, really nice, because you're the one who needs something from them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So and that's all I have to say. It's just really be nice, and it's not like, don't act privileged, like and sometimes we could, you know, like when we're really impatient and when we're really like, I really need this now, you know. They are in their own timeline. You can't make them work any faster.
Yeah.
You really can't. So you're at their mercy. And so when
Yeah.
you treat them nice, you get a nicer return.
I think it's a great point, because relationships, that's my big takeaway from what you said, is we brought on Allie Sutherland since we started working with you, Vicki. So you were actually part of watching our team grow in real time. But
Yeah.
what I like about what Allie does is she's not a designer, she's a project manager. So her whole job is to stay in front of those people. So if it's, you know, Karen at Cherokee County or Tina in Gilmer County or whomever, since we're doing so many projects in multiple counties like Cobb and Cherokee and Gilmer and Forsyth, you start building relationships. You start to know who those people are. When we go to the permitting process, and we have, you know, a face that we want and a reputation we want to keep as a design team, because we want a successful building permit just as much as our clients do, we hope. So when we go into that process, you know, greasing the wheels is part of that too, but it's really about building a good relationship and understanding what they're looking for, understanding what people are motivated by. People who are working in the county are motivated probably by their paychecks. But if you make the process easy for them, they're going to make it easy for you. So when you go in, you know, with good questions and with good information and with good intention, that will be evident. I think that's what niceness means. It's not just that you're batting your eyes at somebody, but you're coming into with respect. And what I think people see as respect is that you come prepared, you come asking intelligent questions, and you come with receptiveness. So that, and then you also come with advocates. So for us, it's building an advocacy. But yeah, what questions do either three of y'all have, either for each other or for myself, or what comments do you have that you would say, hey, this has been a big pain in the butt. This is how I'm dealing with it, or here's a lesson I learned. I would love to just open this up for the next 10 minutes just to hear. Maybe Linda, this would be a good chance for you to tell us where you're at with your project and what brought you to the call, if that's a good place to start too.
That's a whole lot to unpack.
Okay. Well, you don't have to unpack all of it.
No, I think for me that the hesitancy to move forward is that I just need to make sure that things are right. My husband, so this is a little bit of background. My husband is a huge new house fan. He loves new houses. And I happen to fall in love with a 1924 farmhouse on the Meredith Square. So and we went from a 4,500 square foot house to a 1,500 square foot house. So there's a lot, you know, there's a lot there. But I think for me, my biggest fear, because, you know, I do play a role in the construction industry, is that I do not want to move forward without a rock solid plan, budget, and a schedule, because I have to move out of my house and my carrying costs are going to be significant.
Yeah.
So that is, and every month that I am not back in my house or I'm out of my house, that's eating into my renovation budget. I am 55 years old. My husband is 59, and we just took on a 30-year mortgage after walking out of the house we've been into for 20 years. So those are really primary concerns for me. His thing is like, can we just for the sake do something? And I don't want to do that because that is a really great way to have a half-built house that I can't either get a CO for. And so now I've got even bigger problem. Right now, what I explain is that what we're living in is inconvenient. It is not a problem. Should we move forward without a plan, schedule, and budget, that's where we will have problems. So you guys are doing new builds, I guess, and that's a little bit different animal than what I'm getting into. Plus the fact that there's a lot of historic features that are in my home that I want to retain. So my doors are 100 years old. My floorboards are 10 to 12 foot, 100-year-old heart pine. My house literally sits on granite. So there's a whole structural element there. So there's a lot going on with it. So that's me in a nutshell.
So that's touching on the very thing is owning the process. So, having a plan going into it, so rock solid what you're getting into. What would either of y'all say that in response to Linda? It's a little different situation because, but ultimately we're looking at a new home. Whether it's renovating an existing project, it's going to become a new home once it's renovated, or it's building something from the ground up. It's more or less the same process. You're preserving or you're building something new, but you're doing something within a budget with style and function. What would y'all say to those concerns? If anybody had advice for Linda.
I get that. I get your concerns about making sure that the next step is secure before proceeding to the next one, because you're potentially spending a lot of money, and all of a sudden, if it can't go on, you've spent that money and you can't recover it. So
I can't get into my house. I can't get back into the house that I'm out of because I can't get a certificate of occupancy because I don't have critical elements.
Yeah,
you can't move into a house without appliances. You can't get your certificate of occupancy if your stove's not in. So my stove being delayed could cost me literally $9,000 in carrying costs to be in a rental house because I can't move back into my house.
Yeah.
Can you put a temporary stove in there? Like a barbecue grill inside.
It is even just the downsizing alone, because we moved from Roswell to Canton. So Vicky, I'm actually in Canton, funny enough. And so we bought that house and didn't sell the Roswell house for like 6 to 8 months so that we had time to renovate. But it's not a historical house, unfortunately. So you've got a whole bunch more there than I had. But having renovated in situ, I've said I'd never ever do that again. So we took the time to renovate before, or at least a good portion of it before we moved in. But then downsizing that's like, there's a whole psychological and challenge when you're downsizing literal floor space.
That was my husband's thing. He's like, we're not selling this house until that house is done. And I'm like, I don't know what bank account you're looking at, but all the equity that we're sitting on is what I need to renovate this house,
Right.
Anyway, I don't want to derail the conversation, but that's...
Well, it's definitely a chicken egg, but that's why I think part of what I'm learning through all of this is like having a plan means it's different for everything. It's different for every situation, but there's some things that remain the same. There's always going to be a permit at the end of the day. There's always going to be a budget, a construction loan, somewhere the money's going to come from. And we need to know how much of that money goes towards it. So the value that we're always trying to create as a company is answering those questions for a client. So it's hard. There's not one way to do it. And we've learned that there's many ways to do it. But some of the things we touched on, we're asking the right questions, bringing a lot of understanding, doing a lot of discovery before we start designing. So a lot of the things, Linda, since you and I spoke last when we were out on that property in Marietta, one of the things we started doing differently was spending a whole lot more time with just understanding the existing property and understanding the world of the property and understanding the world of the client before we even get going. And so it's an ongoing process. And I think I would love to keep having the conversation, maybe coffee or go look at that home again in Marietta and start dreaming again. But what questions do y'all have for each other or for me as we start to wrap up? Does anybody have like anything they want to say?
do.
Yeah, go ahead, Vicky.
I do. Is anyone else, Susan, do you have a GC working with you?
We have a builder that I've used before, I guess.
Okay, so he will be the GC.
so he's going to, I guess, sort of have that role. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but like we have a cabin already in LJ, and we had the whole basement sort of fitted out, and I worked with him on that, and he like managed that whole process. It's not quite the same thing, but we had a really good relationship, and he does a lot of building in LJ. So I have Jack and his team, with several, I guess, stages of scope, in scope, and then the builder, I'm trying not to add more layer more costs in on that. Theoretically it shouldn't be an overly complex project, but
because we're the owner builder, so we're our own GC.
Oh,
yeah.
How are you managing your trades and finding your trades, and how are you doing that, and how do you know when it's right or when it's wrong?
Oh, well, we're not in that
background.
We're not in the stage yet, but the contractors, the subs that we've looked at, we have a next door neighbor who's built his house, and this is his fourth build. So he has a relationship with all of the contractors that we've contacted.
So he's basically construction managing, and you're holding all the liability under the license. You hold your own license as an owner.
Yeah.
Or you pulled your own permit as an owner.
Yeah, we are going to do that. We haven't done that yet. I'm waiting for the bank to say yes, it's a go, or I'm waiting for the bank, because I don't want to be contacting and wasting my time, and then all of a sudden this is a no-go. Even though I think it's going to be a go, I don't want to be so confident that I spend so much time and money in trying to get that done.
Can I ask why you took on the role of GC? And then you're using basically a construction manager. Was it what brought you to that? Tell me, can you talk me through that process?
So we actually bought a land before in Dawsonville and from an auction, and having done that, I met a lot of builders and also contacts, and he said, Vicky, you can build your own house. I'm building mine for $102 per square foot. This was 4 years ago. And
okay.
And he builds $1 million homes in Alpharetta, and he said, if you need contacts, I'll give you the contacts. So he just encouraged me to look into that, and then I kept meeting builders and contractors and so forth and so on, and so I just got encouraged, and my next door neighbor really inspired us to do it ourselves, because Vicky, I live here. I will go and look at the houses. He just loves helping people. There is a whole community of home builders that are rising to just really be helpful to each other. Keith Kelch is one of them. I mean, he holds a podcast on Thursday nights, and people just asking him questions, and you learn so much from that. So I don't know what it's gonna bring yet, but we're prepared to just kind of ask for help when we need it. But I'm confident that my next door neighbor is going to help us, because he's helped the other neighbor who is doing a build also. So he is reliable.
So is he going to sign on as your project manager?
No, we don't need a project manager. We are.
I mean, is he going to sign on as a consultant? My concern would be, I wouldn't know if it was right or if it was wrong, if the framing was right or wrong, if it was to code, if it was right or wrong, if the tie-ins or the tie-downs, even though we have the engineer's drawings and we have really detailed architectural plans, if the framers come in and things are off, 4 or 5 inches on my roof line, how does that impact my roof line across all my rooms, and how would I know that? Like, I think, and then you don't have a warranty, right? So if things go haywire, I mean, even though a builder warranty is a year, if things go kind of off the rails, I don't know what I don't know. And I think that's my thing about having somebody with that experience and that knowledge that's literally signed on to be committed to the project. Because what if he moves, or what if he dies, or what if?
Yeah, so that could be very paralyzing, to just worry about everything that may or may not happen. So I'm confident about the house getting inspected properly, number one, right? After every stage of your build, it gets
Right. So the inspector comes and he finds an issue. Are you going to go back and negotiate that out with the trade? And
Well,
do
you have to do that as part of your build. You have to go there and say, hey, you got to fix this. Usually you don't release all of the funds that they ask for until.
Sure, of course.
Yeah,
Of course.
so they have to come back and fix whatever is needed. But I'm also confident about the builders, the framers that I'm hiring are professionals, and they've done this before, and they know the rules and the IRC and everything that needs to be done. So it's also to their detriment if they don't know what they're doing and are very negligent in like checking every crossing every T and dotting the I's. They have to do that. They have to do that as professionals, because it makes them lose money if they have to come back and fix what they need to do.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Now, Jack, would you be doing site visits as well on that project and kind of following up on that? Is that a service that you guys do or no?
Depends.
CA?
We could do construction administration through our partner builder. So we have a partner general contractor who's on most of our projects. He's not working on Vicky's or Susan's, but we typically bring him on as a construction consultant. So Vicky or Susan, for example, if they ever got to a point where they're like, we really do need to have them weigh in, we can bring that engagement on. So he would do CA work if we asked him to on any projects, or he would be the builder who's doing the CA. As a design team, we're not necessarily doing the exact CA. We're doing more like post-design support and consulting. So if there is a time when somebody's on site doing a build, and I had this happen, somebody's in the middle of building and the client called me and said, he's not building to specs. We designed it this way and he's building it another way. We had to get involved and get him connected with the engineer consequently. And it turned out the builder was not the best one for that client in particular, but we ended up getting it solved because we stopped them from just assuming how to do it and then directed them back to the plans and said, actually, it is going to work engineering wise because it's drawn this way. So as a design team, we can always bring them back to, here's how it's designed and here's why, and here's the engineer already gave you a proof of concept on that. So the
if
answer
I'm opening my refrigerator into my cabinetry, I'm going to be wickedy upset. And that happens all the time. I see it all the time. I see misalignment in cabinetry and appliances. I see weird bump outs. I see this whole field fixing thing that's just going to eat my lunch every day that I'm living in that house. You go, sorry.
Well, that's also why I'd rather get involved. So, whether it's Vicky or Susan bringing your own builder, what I really ask from both of them is let us be involved with them as much as possible. So if you have a builder or have a person you already want to work with, get them connected to the design team early, because the better that whoever's actually doing the building understands the design intent. What happens is when you have a design team that does this design for the client and then they go build it and they're just, I'll figure it out. I don't know what the architect really wants. That's a problem. So
or why right? Or why your stairwell is 48 inches wide and not 40 inches wide, or why and how that impacts your roof lines and how it's all that happens.
Right. And so I'd rather have somebody asking the question then early during design, not during production. So if they do want to push back, then let's have a dialogue between architecture, interiors, and engineering and construction before we get there. That we're just up at our hour here. These were great questions, great conversation. I hate to cut it short. Linda, why don't we follow up together? And
I'd love that.
Vicky, I would love to have you as a guest for our next webinar podcast, and we'll just do a one-on-one interview about your process, because I think community is where we learn the most, like this, the four of us talking, exchanging ideas from different points of view. Everybody, I hope, gets a takeaway. I'm certainly not coming in here saying I'm the expert on this process. We're just facilitating a conversation around community so that we can mind share and see each other's homes get built. That's why we do it. I want to walk into that home next year that Vicky's building, and same with you, Susan. Like we we really want to see that happen. So the community that's committed to these outcomes, every time we get together, we're rooting for each other. We're sharing, the word. Linda, you missed the expression of where did you find the blueberries, which is why we do this. Is where did you find the answers? Where did you find the good outcomes? Bring them to the tribe, share them with the community. Maybe that helps somebody else find blueberries in their project too. So